The rain came down like a curtain, heavy and relentless, blurring the world into a gray haze. Maya clutched her thin denim jacket, useless against the storm, as she stumbled down the empty street, her boots splashing in puddles that seemed to swallow her whole. She was lost, soaked, and alone in a town she barely knew, with no idea how a single reckless choice could change her life forever. It was supposed to be a simple road trip. At 28, Maya had packed her beat-up sedan with a duffel bag, a playlist of indie rock, and a vague plan to escape the suffocating routine of her Seattle office job. She'd driven south, chasing the promise of open roads and small-town charm, but now, somewhere in rural Oregon, her GPS had died, and the storm had turned her adventure into a nightmare. Her car was a mile back, stuck in a ditch, and her phone was useless, its screen black from water damage. Panic clawed at her chest as thunder roared, shaking the ground beneath her. She spotted a faint glow through the rain house, its porch light cutting through the downpour like a beacon. Her legs burned as she ran toward it, heart pounding, not from the cold but from the desperate hope of safety. She reached the porch, gasping, and pounded on the door, her knuckles stinging against the wood. For a moment there was only silence, broken by the relentless drumming of rain. Then the door creaked open, and there she was, a woman, maybe early 30s, with long wavy black hair and eyes so warm they seemed to glow in the dim light. "You're soaked," the woman said, her voice soft but steady, like a melody cutting through the storm's chaos. "Come in before you freeze." Maya hesitated, her instincts warring between caution and desperation. But the woman's gaze held no threat, only concern, and the warmth spilling from the house was too inviting to resist. She stepped inside, dripping water onto the hardwood floor, and the door closed behind her, shutting out the storm. "I'm Elena," the woman said, handing Maya a thick towel. "You look like you've been through hell." Maya managed a shaky laugh, wrapping the towel around her shoulders. "Maya? And yeah, that's about right." She glanced around, taking in the cozy living room, bookshelves crammed with novels, a fireplace crackling softly, and a faint scent of lavender lingering in the air. It felt like a sanctuary, a stark contrast to the chaos outside. Elena gestured to a couch, her movements graceful but unpretentious. "Sit. I'll get you something warm to drink." "Tea? Coffee?" "Tea," Maya said, her voice barely above a whisper. She sank onto the couch, her body trembling from the cold and something else, something she couldn't name yet. Elena disappeared into the kitchen, and Maya took a moment to study her surroundings. The house was old but well-loved, with mismatched furniture and framed photos on the walls. Elena smiling with friends, hiking in mountains, laughing at a festival. There was a quiet strength in the space, a sense of someone who had built a life on their own terms. Elena returned with a steaming mug of chamomile tea, setting it on the coffee table before sitting across from Maya. "So what's the story? You don't look like you're from around here." Maya wrapped her hands around the mug, letting its warmth seep into her fingers. "I'm not. I was driving, trying to clear my head, I guess. Then the storm hit, my car broke down, and here I am." She left out the part about running from a breakup, from the ache of a relationship that had ended not with a fight but with a slow, suffocating drift. She didn't know why she was holding back, but something about Elena made her want to be careful, to guard the raw pieces of herself. Elena nodded, her eyes searching Maya's face with an intensity that made her stomach flutter. "This town's not exactly a tourist hotspot. You must have taken a wrong turn somewhere." "Story of my life," Maya said, forcing a smile. But Elena's expression softened, and for a moment, they just looked at each other, the silence heavy with unspoken questions. The storm raged outside, but in here it felt like the world had paused, giving them this fragile moment. Elena leaned forward, her voice gentle but firm. "You can stay here tonight. The roads are a mess, and I'm not letting you go back out there." Maya's heart skipped. "I don't want to impose." "You're not," Elena cut in, her tone leaving no room for argument. "Besides, I could use the company. It gets quiet out here." There was something in the way Elena said it, a hint of loneliness beneath her warmth, that made Maya's chest tighten. She nodded, grateful, and took a sip of tea, letting it soothe her frayed nerves. They talked for hours, the conversation flowing effortlessly about books, music, the quirks of small-town life. Elena was a painter, Maya learned, who'd moved to this quiet corner of Oregon to escape the noise of Portland and find inspiration in the wild beauty of the coast. Maya shared stories of her love for photography, her restless need to explore, her fear of being stuck in one place forever. As the night deepened, the storm began to ease, but the connection between them grew stronger, charged with an unspoken tension. Maya caught herself staring at Elena's hands as she gestured, at the way her smile lit up the room. She wasn't sure if it was the tea, the warmth, or something else entirely, but she felt drawn to Elena in a way she hadn't felt in years, not since she'd first fallen in love, back when she still believed love could be simple. By the time they said goodnight, Maya's clothes were dry, and Elena had set up a guest room with fresh sheets and a soft quilt. Lying in the dark, Maya listened to the fading patter of rain, her mind racing. She'd come to this town by accident, running from a life that felt too small. But now, in this stranger's house, she felt something new, stirring a spark of possibility, fragile but undeniable. She didn't know it yet, but that spark would soon ignite into something that would change her forever. The morning light filtered through the guest room's curtains, soft and golden, pulling Maya from a dream she couldn't quite remember. She lay still for a moment, the warmth of the quilt cocooning her, the scent of lavender lingering from the night before. For the first time in months, she didn't wake up with the weight of her ex's absence pressing against her chest. She found Elena in the kitchen, humming softly as she poured coffee into 2 mugs. The sight of her casual in a loose sweater, her dark hair falling over one shoulder, made Maya's breath catch. "Morning," Elena said, glancing up with a smile that felt like sunlight. "Sleep okay?" "Better than I expected," Maya admitted, sliding onto a stool at the counter. "Thanks for everything." Elena waved it off, but her eyes lingered on Maya, warm and curious. "You're welcome. Hungry? I make a mean pancake." They ate breakfast together, the conversation picking up where it left off, easy, but laced with something deeper, like a current running beneath the surface. Elena talked about her art, how she'd spent years painting what others expected, until she moved here and started creating for herself. Maya shared her own struggles, how photography had once been her passion, but had become just another task in a life she didn't recognize anymore. With every word, Maya felt the walls she built around herself start to crack, letting Elena's warmth seep in. After breakfast, Elena offered to drive Maya to her car, now that the storm had passed. The road was muddy but passable, and as they approached the ditch where Maya's sedan sat, her stomach sank. The car was a mess, tires stuck, hood dented from a fallen branch. "This is going to be a problem," Maya muttered, running a hand through her short hair. Elena frowned, assessing the damage. "You're not driving that anywhere today. Come on, let's get it towed. There's a mechanic in town who owes me a favor." Maya wanted to protest, to insist she could handle it, but the truth was she didn't want to leave. Not yet. So she nodded, and they drove to the small garage in town, where a gruff but kind mechanic promised to look at the car by afternoon. With time to kill, Elena suggested they walk through the town's weekly farmers market, a cluster of stalls brimming with fresh produce, handmade crafts, and the hum of community. As they wandered, Maya felt herself relaxing, drawn into Elena's easy confidence. They sampled homemade jam, laughed at a dog chasing its tail, and stopped at a stall where Elena bought a small bouquet of wildflowers. When she tucked one behind Maya's ear, her fingers brushing lightly against her cheek, Maya's heart stuttered. "Looks good on you," Elena said, her voice soft but teasing. Maya blushed, her usual defenses crumbling. "You're trouble, you know that?" Elena grinned, unapologetic. "Maybe. But you're smiling, so I'm doing something right." The day unfolded like a dream, each moment pulling Maya closer to Elena. They ended up at a small cafe, sipping coffee as the sun climbed higher, and Maya found herself opening up about things she'd kept buried, her fear of never finding her place, the heartbreak that had sent her running. Elena listened, really listened, her eyes never leaving Maya's, and when she reached across the table to squeeze her hand, it felt like an anchor in a storm. By the time they returned to the garage, the mechanic had bad news. The car needed parts that wouldn't arrive for a few days. Maya's first instinct was panic. Her life was in Seattle, her job, her responsibilities, but Elena's voice cut through the noise. "Stay with me," she said simply. "A few days won't hurt." Maya hesitated, torn between the pull of her old life and the allure of this new one. But the memory of Elena's touch, the flower still tucked behind her ear, tipped the scales. "Okay," she said, her voice barely steady. A few days. Back at Elena's house, the evening felt different, charged, like the air before last night's storm. They cooked dinner together, bumping shoulders in the small kitchen, their laughter filling the space. After, they sat on the couch, a bottle of wine between them, and the conversation turned quiet, intimate. Elena spoke of her own pasta relationship that had ended in betrayal, a move to this town to heal. Maya saw the vulnerability in her eyes, mirroring her own, and something shifted. When Elena's hand brushed against Maya's, neither pulled away. Their fingers intertwined, and Maya felt a rush of warmth, of rightness, that she hadn't known she was craving. "I'm glad you got caught in that storm," Elena whispered, her voice trembling just enough to betray her own nerves. Maya's breath hitched. She wanted to say something, anything, but words failed her. Instead, she leaned in, and when their lips met, it was soft, tentative, but electric, a spark that promised to grow into a flame. The kiss lingered in Maya's mind the next morning, a memory so vivid it felt like a dream she could still touch. She woke to the sound of Elena moving around the house, the clink of dishes, the soft hum of a song. For a moment Maya lay still, her heart racing with a mix of exhilaration and fear. What was she doing? Falling for a stranger in a town she'd never meant to stay in? She found Elena in the backyard, sketching in a notebook, the morning sun casting a glow over her. "You're up," Elena said, smiling as she closed the book. "I was going to drag you out here to see the view." Maya followed her gaze to the rolling hills beyond the house, green and vibrant after the storm. "It's beautiful," she said, but her eyes were on Elena, who looked radiant in the light, her hair catching the breeze. They spent the day together, exploring the coastline nearby. Elena drove them to a secluded beach, where waves crashed against jagged rocks and seagulls wheeled overhead. They walked barefoot in the sand, sharing stories of their childhoods, their dreams, their fears. Maya told Elena about her mother, a fierce woman who'd raised her alone but never understood her restlessness. Elena spoke of her own family, distant now, who'd struggled with her coming out years ago. The words flowed easily, but every glance, every brush of their hands, carried a weight that made Maya's pulse quicken. By the afternoon, they were back at the house, painting together in Elena's small studio. Maya had never been much of an artist, but Elena handed her a brush, guiding her hand with a gentle touch that sent shivers down her spine. "You're a natural," Elena teased, as Maya laughed at her clumsy strokes. "I'm a disaster," Maya shot back, but she was grinning, her heart lighter than it had been in months. The room smelled of paint and possibility, and when Elena leaned in to kiss her again, this time deeper, more certain, Maya didn't hesitate. She kissed her back, her hands finding Elena's waist, the world narrowing to the warmth of their connection. But as the day faded, doubt crept in. Maya's life in Seattle loomed like a shadow, her job, her apartment, the expectations she'd never quite met. She wanted to stay to see where this could go, but the thought of appending her life for something so new, so fragile, terrified her. Over dinner she was quieter, and Elena noticed. "You okay?" Elena asked, her voice gentle but searching. Maya nodded, but her chest felt tight. "Just thinking about what happens when my car's fixed." Elena's face softened, but there was a flicker of hurt in her eyes. "You don't have to decide anything now. Just be here with me for now." Maya wanted to promise she would, but the words caught in her throat. Instead, she reached for Elena's hand, holding it tightly, as if she could anchor herself to this moment. They fell asleep on the couch that night, tangled together, the sound of crickets filling the silence. The next day, the mechanic called the car would be ready tomorrow. The news hit Maya like a punch, and she spent the morning distracted, her thoughts a tangle of longing and fear. Elena seemed to sense it, keeping their day light, taking her to a local bookstore, sharing a picnic by a river. But the unspoken question hung between them. What now? That evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, Elena broke the silence. "I know you're scared," she said, her voice steady but raw. "I am too. But I haven't felt this alive in years, Maya. Not until you showed up." Maya's throat tightened. "I don't know if I'm ready to change everything. My life's a mess, Elena. I don't even know who I am half the time." Elena turned to her, eyes fierce with conviction. "Then figure it out here. With me. You don't have to have all the answers now. The words hit Maya hard, cracking open something she kept locked away. She wanted to believe in them, but the fear of failing, of hurting Elena, of hurting herself was overwhelming. She leaned into Elena, resting her head on her shoulder, and they sat in silence, the weight of the moment pressing down on them. The call came early the next morning. The car was ready. Maya stared at her phone, the mechanic's words echoing in her head, each one pulling her closer to a decision she wasn't ready to make. She glanced at Elena, who was watering plants in the garden, unaware of the storm brewing in Maya's heart. They drove to the garage in silence, the air between them heavy with unspoken words. The mechanic handed Maya the keys and she stood by her car, its dents and scratches a reminder of how far she'd strayed from her plan. Elena stood a few feet away, arms crossed, her expression unreadable. I guess this is it, Maya said, her voice breaking. I should get back to Seattle. Elena's eyes darkened, but she nodded. If that's what you want. It wasn't what Maya wanted, not really, but the pull of her old life, the safety of familiarity, was stronger than she'd expected. She opened the car door, then hesitated, turning back to Elena. This isn't about you. You're incredible. I just don't know how to do this. Elena stepped closer, her voice soft but firm. You don't have to know. You just have to try. The words hung in the air, a challenge and a plea. Maya wanted to reach for her to close the distance, but fear held her back. She got into the car, her hands shaking as she started the engine. Elena didn't move, didn't wave, just watched as Maya drove away, her figure growing smaller in the rearview mirror. The road back to Seattle was a blur. Maya's mind replayed every moment with Elena, the laughter, the kisses, the quiet moments that felt like home. By the time she reached her apartment, the city felt wrong, too loud, too cold. She tried to slip back into her routine work, coffee runs, late-night scrolling, but everything felt hollow. Her camera sat untouched, her photos uninspired. She missed Elena with an ache that grew sharper each day. A week passed, then two. Maya's coworkers noticed her distraction. Her friends asked why she seemed so distant. She couldn't explain it, couldn't put into words how a stranger had unraveled her carefully guarded heart. Late one night, unable to sleep, she pulled out her phone and found a photo she'd taken at the beach with Elena, a candid shot of her laughing, her hair wild in the wind. The sight of it broke something in Maya, and she started to cry, the weight of her choice crashing down. She called in sick the next day and drove back to Oregon, her heart pounding with every mile. When she reached Elena's house, she sat in her car for a long moment, fear and hope warring inside her. Finally, she knocked on the door, her breath shallow. Elena opened it, her eyes widening in surprise. Maya! I was wrong, Maya said, her voice trembling. I thought I needed to go back to figure things out, but all I could think about was you. I don't know what this means or how it works, but I want to try. With you. Elena's expression softened, but there was caution in her eyes. You hurt me, Maya. Leaving like that. It wasn't easy. I know, Maya said, tears spilling over. I'm sorry. I'm here now, and I'm not running again. Elena studied her for a long moment, then stepped forward, pulling Maya into a hug that felt like coming home. They stood there holding each other, as the world around them faded away. The weeks that followed were a dance of rediscovery. Maya stayed with Elena, her life in Seattle on hold as they navigated the fragile newness of their relationship. They spent days exploring the town, painting, taking photos, and talking late into the night. Each moment was a step toward trust, toward building something real. But it wasn't easy. Maya's doubts lingered, whispering that she was risking too much, that love this intense couldn't last. Elena had her own fears, her past betrayal making her cautious, but they faced them together, talking through the hard moments, learning each other's rhythms. Maya started taking photos again, capturing the beauty of Elena's world, the way the light hit the hills, the curve of Elena's smile. Elena painted Maya, her brushstrokes bold and tender, a portrait of a woman finding her way. One evening, as they sat by the fireplace, Maya took Elena's hand. I'm scared, she admitted, but I've never felt more like myself than I do with you. Elena squeezed her hand, her eyes shining. I'm scared too, but we're doing this together. Okay? Maya nodded and they kissed, the firelight casting shadows that danced around them. It wasn't a promise of forever, but it was a promise to try to choose each other every day. Months later, Maya made the decision to move to Oregon. She quit her job, sold her apartment, and brought her camera to Elena's house, now their house. They built a life together, messy, imperfect, but theirs. The town embraced them, their love a quiet rebellion against the world's noise. Maya's photos and Elena's paintings found a home in local galleries, their art a testament to the beauty they'd found in each other. One rainy afternoon, a year after the storm that brought them together, they stood on the porch watching the rain fall. Maya leaned into Elena, her heart full. "I got caught in a thunderstorm," she said softly, "and it was the best thing that ever happened to me." Elena laughed, pulling her close. "Me too." Their story wasn't perfect, but it was real. A testament to the courage it takes to choose love, to choose yourself. In a world that often demanded conformity, they carved out a space for their truth, proving that sometimes, the greatest adventures begin with a single unexpected moment. Thank you for listening. Like and subscribe to get notifications about next videos.